got new reaction tonight from an explosive behind-the-scenes look at the Trump for President campaign. Over the course of a critical 5-week period, from early March to mid-April, New York Times Magazine reporter Robert Draper embedded with the Trump team, trying to capture the chaos and the contender in a unique way. He wrote up the results in a nearly 7,000-word piece for this weekend's New York Times Magazine with Mr. Trump's wild ride down the home stretch with the impossible nominee. Here to weigh in moments is Eric Trump, Mr. Trump's son and campaign advisor. He has a cameo in the story. But first, we go to Robert Draper, writer for the New York Times Magazine. Robert, great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Megan.
All right, so for those who haven't read it, what is the headline? What's your takeaway?
Well, I think the headline is that Donald Trump is the manager of his own campaign. He's the communications director for his campaign. He's in charge of everything in his campaign, for better and for worse. And so these notions of trying to curb Mr. Trump, trying to make him more presidential, trying to lend a more conventional sheen to his campaign haven't worked, not because of the incompetence of members of his campaign, but because that's the way Trump wants it. Trump, for better or for worse, has been Trump throughout.
There was a moment where they brought in Paul Manafort to manage the conventions, and people thought that he was replacing Lewandowski as the campaign manager. You talk about a moment where Trump kind of put him in his place when it comes to managing the media. Tell us about that.
Sure. There was a press release that Trump wanted to put out relating to a woman named Sherry Jacobus, who the Trump campaign had briefly considered hiring as a communications strategist. He had written a few untoward tweets, shall we say, about Ms. Jacobus, who then threatened to sue for libel. Trump wanted to counterpunch, as he tends to do. Paul Manafort called in after having read the draft of the press statement, pleading with Trump not to put it out there. And Trump, using a colorful word, said, "Don't tell me how to do PR." And the statement did go out.
What do you think is the biggest revelation in the piece? I mean, what do you think is the most explosive piece of information?
Well, I mean, there are a few things that, you know, again, as you know, Megan, I mean, Trump is, you know, maybe outrageously uncensored. And he said some things to me, for example, when asked about, when I asked him where is the most dangerous place in the world that he'd visited, he joked first and said Brooklyn, but then he said, actually, Oakland and Ferguson are two of the most dangerous places in the world. And I found that to be unusual because for a man of his wealth, I think he actually has a fairly constrained view of the world. And to suggest that, say, Mogadishu and Oakland might be comparable, you know, might strike some people as a little bit bizarre.
He also made news with you on the subject of abortion. He had that moment with Chris Matthews where Matthews asked him whether a woman getting an abortion, if abortion were made illegal, should be punished. This is what he's told Matthews. Hold on.
Do you believe, believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
10 cents, 10 years,
I don't know. That I don't know. That
well, why not?
I don't know.
You take positions and everything else.
Frankly, I do take positions and everything else. It's a very complicated position.
He later walked that back, and with you, he changed it even more. What did he tell you? Well,
what he said to me was, what he meant to say was that women already punish themselves, and so that there shouldn't be any kind of jail punishment for them because they are already essentially flagellating themselves for having committed an abortion. Now, Trump, after he made those remarks, went off stage, and his campaign team said, perhaps we should talk about this. He said, no, I think it's just fine. And it was only when he was besieged with media requests, not only by members of the media, but also by CEOs, did Chris Christie's political staff actually draft a message that kind of threaded the needle between the pro-life movement and the concerns of women. So
you're telling me if he walked off that stage, it was flagged for him as an issue, and he was like, no, I don't want to change it.
That's what I'm telling you, yes.
Fascinating. Great job. Thanks for being here tonight, Robert.
Sure
All the
thing.
best. Joining me now with more, Eric Trump. He's been on the campaign trail with his father, and he's an executive vice president at the Trump Organization. Eric, good to see you. So what do you make of that your dad stood by that very controversial statement until he was, you know, sort of hit with the advice of many campaign staffers saying you cannot stick by that?
Well, I think it's actually refreshing, right? I mean, how many of these candidates you see every single day, and they're being coached by 400 different people, and they talk in these little generalities and sound bites, and nothing they say has any meaning. Everything's so scripted, you know, everything's so censored. I mean, here's a man who speaks from the heart. Here's a man who likes to control his campaign. Here's a guy who spent 1/20th of what every other candidate has spent, and he's a Republican nominee.
That's not really on point, because Trump's unfiltered nature is something
Sure.
that people love about him. But
Sure.
but what happened here was he said something really dicey, and sounds like the Christie people and other advisors are saying you got to walk that back. And what he ultimately, first he said no, I'm good, and then he did walk it back. He actually completely reversed himself on it, and then actually came up with another explanation in this piece. That's what the reporter's saying.
Yeah, listen, I think that's part of being a candidate, right? I mean, sometimes mistakes are made, and sometimes things are said, and you're up there on stage, right? He's not reading off a teleprompter. Remember that, Megan. He's out there,
But what does he
doing
actually
his thing.
feel? That's what we're trying to get to. What does he feel? What he said to Chris Matthews, which he stuck by when he walked off the debate stage, or what he said in the statement, which reversed it?
Listen, I think it's a really tough issue. I think it's a really personal issue, right? I'm not a guy who talks about social issues. That's not my job. I build hotels all over the place. But listen, I think it's a personal issue, and I think it's a tough issue. And he spent a lot of time talking about the exemptions, and he spent a lot of time talking about the nuances of that position, and it's a difficult one. I mean, it really, really is, and I think you see people struggle with that issue every single day, including, quite frankly, people who have been in politics their entire life. It's a very, very personal issue.
Mm-hmm. What did you make? Because you run the hotels, which is good, and golf courses and all sorts of great, cool things. But what did you make of the story about your dad? Because the reporter is talking about how he runs his communications, and he's done such an effective job with the media. About the whole John Miller, John Barron thing.
Yeah, well, listen, my father does run it. I mean, that's who he is, right? No different than he ran the hotels, no different than he runs the golf courses. I mean, my father likes to be intimately involved in the details, and I saw that thing, and I saw the Miller thing, and quite frankly, it didn't sound like him. Even if it was him, quite frankly, it was 40.
It didn't sound like him.
It's 40 years ago. Well, listen, when I saw it, it didn't. But even if it was 40 years ago. I mean, I don't hold much relevance to the whole thing. But I think it's actually nice to see somebody that is intimately involved. Again, it's a difference between somebody who's very macro and somebody who's very micro, and somebody who actually is a doer versus a dictator and somebody who's a delegator. And I think that's refreshing. I mean, I want to see the person in the White House ultimately. I want to see that person being a doer. I want to see that person take action to their own hands as opposed to kind of sub it out to a million different people. And that's the father I know, and that's the man that's become an enormous success and ultimately won this.
Don't want to cut you off. We're 4 seconds from the hard break. Eric Trump, great to see you, sir.
Thank you, Megan.